What's needed to really get palliative care much more out there into general practice in Australia?
Look, I think we've learnt from the surveys that we've done amongst general practitioners that they are engaged in the concept of palliative care, but what we aren't certain from that survey is how well informed they are in doing that. I wonder from the information that we've got whether the key is really about education of general practice to what palliative care is, and upskilling of general practice in their ability to really do a good job at the primary care level.
Do you think that there's still misconception about what palliative care is?
I think general practice knows quite well what palliative care is now, and I think that's something that's happened, perhaps mushroomed a little bit over recent times. I'm aware that there are certain groups in general practice who shy away from it, and I think when we talk about a death-denying society, we probably are more talking about death-denying health professionals, of which some are GPs.
So if you contemplate there's 50,000 general practitioners in Australia, they occupy a large age group of the population. They're just a cut of the cross-section of the Australian population. And so if there's 50,000 general practitioners, there's 50,001 views, and that will incorporate views about palliative care. Palliative care is now embracing more the chronic illnesses, and that's quite okay, and it's a label across that. But a lot of medical education, for example, the one I experienced through the early 80s, I attended Monash University in Melbourne, it was very much about treat this, it's prolonging life, it's all about that. And so as part of the psyche that I will have accumulated, not as a deliberate process, is just that, well, it's about extending life. And the whole concept of palliative care turns that a little bit on its head. There has to be the recognition that, in fact, looking at the evidence, there's not a lot of evidence of immortality. There's sort of one or two documentations around, and one can question some of it. But this is an important part of the life process that tends not to have been discussed. It just didn't exist in my medical undergraduate training. As one comes to the end of life, it is very important to have your general practitioner, that person, it becomes a personal relationship, just not a clear-cut or cleanly cut business relationship.
Well, a lot of the panel focused on GPs, and that was really interesting for me because we've recently done a survey of GPs, and we've found that the majority of them see their role as very important in the delivery of palliative care and end-of-life care. But something else that came out of the survey and was really strongly said in the panel today was that GPs simply don't receive the training. So you've got about a third of GPs that we surveyed haven't received any training in palliative care. So it's really important that we extend that training to all health professionals as undergraduates.
A lot of international medical graduates go to the more remote areas because people like me won't go or don't want to go or feel they can't go or whatever that might be. The legal view is that when you're a fully registered medical practitioner, you're it. So it doesn't matter if you're day 1 or day 101 plus years as a medical practitioner, the legal expectation is absolutely identical. So there's no, that's okay, you've only been doing it for a week. The expectation is that it's there.
And it goes again back to what Roderick was saying, is that if all you're ever educated to do is to heal and cure at all costs, rather than potentially just in relieving suffering, etc., then you're only going to have that mindset. It's just so important that it's embedded right at the outset. And that goes also for the concept of working in interdisciplinary teams, obviously. And there are programs that are government supported that have modules to run palliative care modules in the undergraduate curricula of all health professionals, not just of medical professionals.
I think education is great, but at the end of the day you've got a very sick patient at home, too sick to get to the GP surgery. Challenges for us are GP visits to the home and after-hours services. So I'll just declare those two as real practical challenges.
For me, in the panel discussion, we did talk a lot about general practitioners, and we did talk a lot about their role, and we do have some criticism from the floor about their availability and other things, and I think it gets back to the point of respect. If we can actually respect that GPs are small business people who need to make a profit, and if we can look at how we can actually engage them in palliative care and still enable them to make a profit, then we win. And I think, to me, that was the bottom line that really came out of it, was again, that ability to really engage them in their lives, in their business.
I think it's becoming harder for GPs. When you look at general practice as being a small business, it becomes harder for them to deliver care that's really patient-centred in the sense of doing home visits, doing after-hours work, and ensuring that they're really meeting the needs of their patients. So we need to have some kind of structure or payment system for GPs that enables them to deliver home visits and also to deliver really well-coordinated care, which is important for palliative care. In rural areas, that's particularly important, and perhaps using teleconferencing and video conferencing in order to case conference around a patient's needs and draw in a multidisciplinary team, even if there's no team available where you actually are living.
I've been a GP for 40 years. Time is money. And in reality, we have to respect that in general practice and learn how to apply the various funding streams that are available in palliative care to support the GP in how he might approach team meetings, how he might approach education, how he might approach other aspects of patient care than what he gets paid for from the medical benefit schedule. And if we do that, I think we'll find better engagement from GPs. If his bottom line's as good, we'll get him.
The 50,000 GPs in Australia, they're the cornerstone of the health system. They're one of the most valuable assets we've got. They have a pretty tough job. They've got to be across all sorts of conditions, all sorts of diseases, all sorts of symptoms. They're worth their weight in gold. They are, some of them, a bit underdone on palliative care. You have to make a decision, I guess, as a GP. Are you going to be part of the palliative care team, or are you going to refer your patients to a specialist provider? My personal preference, but it's up to the GP, of course, is for the GP to be part of that whole process. Typically, patients are their patients. I'd love to see them in a case mentor, case leadership role, so that they steer their patients through the difficult times of going through a palliative care sort of process, a set of treatments. Palliative care is very good at doing teamwork most of the time, but there's more gains to be made for patients if there's more teamwork. If palliative care professionals work behind the scenes with a patient delivering care, so doctors, allied health professionals and nurses are really team-oriented about the patient in a better way than now.
How do we train health professionals? We train the doctors in a faculty of medicine. I'm in a faculty of medicine. We train the nurses in a college of nursing or a faculty of nursing, and allied health professionals have got all sorts of splintered training. Towards the end of their 3, 4, 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, it slowly dawns on us that we graduate them, we give them a testamure, my university does this, we give them a hat to throw in the air, and just as they're walking out the university gates, we say, "Oi! We forgot to tell you, you're going to have to work in multidisciplinary teams."
So what we have undertaken is a consultation liaison model that works across the state. So wherever the child is, they could be in Bendigo Hospital 1 minute, the Royal Children's the next day, at home under the care of their GP on another day. Our team, the paediatric palliative care team, is available to whichever of the health professionals is engaged with that family at that time to provide an advice and support. So that really, we're leveraging the system and trying to bring the system together. Paediatricians are very good at paediatrics, but they're not very experienced with palliative care in the main. Palliative care professionals are very experienced in palliative care, but they don't see many children. So our role is to try and top up in each of those sectors in the area where the skill base and the knowledge base is less.
There's lots of practitioners who've learned how to become a good practitioner, doctors, nurses, allied health professionals, and they practice confidently and well, but is what they're doing right at the cutting edge? Is it evidence-based right up to the minute care? One of the problems is there's 27 million papers in PubMed and Medline available for health professionals to read. So it's very hard to keep on top of your own discipline, let alone everything that's happening in palliative care. So all of medicine is encoded in the literature, and there's 27 million papers. Having a very good care pathway which encodes what you should do at certain points of time for a patient with a certain condition and takes the whole care team through that is a very strong thing to do, and it makes sure that the care is going to be delivered in an evidence-based way. Funding of palliative care. Not so choppy, not so funding in silos, but finding a way to put the dollars together so that patients can get much better cohesive funding depending on their wishes, depending on their clinical needs.
One of the most interesting presentations that we had at our conference in Cairns in August,
a bit closer to that
sorry,
microphone.
was from an occupational therapist or a physiotherapist. I think she was an OT. She was absolutely fantastic, and she was talking about that model of care that occupational therapy could offer, and looking, instead of recognising what the person couldn't do anymore, recognising what was important to them to still be able to do and to assist them to keep doing it and to work. So looking with a different viewpoint of how we viewed the patient, instead of looking at their loss of skill, but trying to build up those skills that were really important to them. And it was just such a wonderful talk that really got everybody thinking.
Whilst we're in a hopeful space, I just wanted to share 3 very quick stories. You can imagine, for me, setting up a paediatric palliative care service 12 years ago. A lot of my colleagues wondered what I was thinking and what I was talking about, and didn't we cure everything in paediatrics? But things have really changed, and just this year 3 things have happened that give me great heart. The first thing is that the medical students at the University of Melbourne, as far as I know, don't have paediatric palliative care on their curriculum, but each year they self-organise a massive conference which is held at the MCG, and they approached me and asked would I come and talk to them about dealing with the death of a child. And they also wanted to have other speakers talk to them about dealing with death, because they know they're going to have to do it. Secondly, in a similar line, the candidates for the FRACP exam in paediatrics, whilst it's not on the curriculum, know that they're going to have to deal with this in their career, and they self-organised for us to give them a talk on that, despite studying for the exam right now. And really, if they wanted to, they could only focus on the questions they know are going to be on the exam, but they wanted to address this topic. And thirdly, this is the first year that we've had registrars in my team. We have 2 positions, and last year when we did the interviews, 23 applicants came forward. They were the best registrars, I think, in Victoria, and they were talking to us the language of humanity in medicine. Where's the humanity? We are looking for the type of medicine that we thought we were going to do. We're not getting it so far in our training and our practice, and we want to come and talk to you about a different kind of medicine. So all of these things give me great hope.